Okay, now what about the server itself? What's really happening on the server? Is it just a single box? Well, it could be technically a single box, a single propped up CPU, but it could be a little more complicated than that. So let's analyze why you would want it to be complicated, or why you would want it to be much more than just a server just serving up some requests. In order to do that, let's understand a little bit more about what would happen if I am logging in and a whole bunch of other users are logging in. Okay, so this is me. I'm staying in India, let's say. So I'm staying in India, and I'm trying to log in using a GUI. And then, like me, there are many other users logging in from the US, let's say. Logging in from the US, let's say this is 200 users. And then so this is another 100 users logging in from UK, all through the GUI. Doesn't matter, GUI or through the browser, all the same. Okay, so this is the client end, and each of this user could be performing any type of transaction. For example, I could be doing the creation of a sales order, and I would do it for like a minute, or I could be doing it for 5 minutes. So all along, the server has to preserve my status, my data, right? So whatever I'm entering is supposed to be stored in the server until I either log off or time out or I cancel. And these other 100 users could be doing 100 other things, right? They could be doing the creation of a purchase order. They could be just logged in, or they could be doing creation of a master data like customer master, material master. See, each of these guys could be doing anything that's possible in SAP. And for each of the user, the server has to maintain what's called as status, where the system server is going to store a whole bunch of data, and this is called user data. There are some technical terms for it, like role area and all that, but we're not interested in that part. We just want to see that we want to just understand that for each user, the server stores an amount of data. That data is stored in the memory, and every time I do a transaction, every time I do an action, like let me give you an example. Let me log in and give you an example. Let's say I want to do a sales order. So I go to VA01 and put in OR 1000, and then click OK, and I enter some customer details like that. Now at this point, I've just entered the customer details and it has pulled some data, and I'm right here. Now I can go have a cup of tea and still come back and continue to work on it. So all through this time, SAP has to preserve my data, like, what's the customer number that I've entered? What other details has the system pulled in, like my name, my address, blah, blah, blah. This is called the user data, and SAP has to maintain this user data for every login. So I could be doing not just one transaction, I could be doing more than one transaction. For example, if I say /OVD03, which is the customer master, right? It opened another window, and then I open this customer. Now, if you see, there are two windows that I've opened, or two transactions that I'm performing right now. One is the creation of a sales order, and the other is the creation of a customer master. So in my case, SAP has to store data for both these transactions, right? One is the sales order, the other is the customer master, right? Like that, SAP allows you to open 6 simultaneous sessions. So for every user, SAP has to store 6 different sets of data that the user could be potentially performing, like sales order here, customer master here, something else, and something else, right? This is the first complication. So there's a ton of data that needs to be stored. The second thing is, when a user logs in through the GUI, right, on the client end, and the server also has to dedicate an amount of CPU resources to act on that data. Meaning, I'm trying to create a sales order here, right? VA01, and when I do that, when I create this sales order, the system has to allocate some CPU resources to me, right? So this is the CPU. The earlier example of storing data was memory. Now it's the CPU. So the CPU resources are, of course, limited. So a dedicated thread has to run and allocate some CPU resources to me. And this CPU resource is not unlimited, right? So there are only so many processors that can be in a server. And when you look at these CPU resources, I'm not the only user, right? So there are so many other users. Let's say I draw them in green. So many other users who are logging in, and the system has to make sure that it balances between the amount of CPU and processes that it has and the number of users that are coming in. At the same time, it has to appear that it is responsive to everybody. So how does it do it?